looking good. All right, I hope I'm in frame here. Welcome to the garage. It's Woodshop Live, and I'm Jay. What's happening? Hope you're doing well. Let me turn that off here. Oh yeah, I look all right. All right. So tonight, welcome to the garage. It's Friday night, and it is September 12th. And tonight we'll be talking about some sanding. And you know, most people, if you talk to them, or if you listen to a lot of woodworkers, especially on YouTube, the thing they say they hate the most is sanding. You talk to them, I hate sanding. Sanding sucks. Sanding is all of this. For me, though, sanding, I kind of enjoy it. I think it's one of the most interesting aspects of woodworking, because it's really about showing attention to detail, because you're really trying to get your piece all the way to a finished state. And to me, that's really exciting. That's really interesting, and I really do enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. Now, part of that enjoyment is the tools that I'm using. Now, when I was still using Ryobi and DeWalt sanders, you know, the orbital sanders, like the quarter sheet sander from DeWalt, or the random orbit sander, the 5-inch from Ryobi, you know, that's fun for like 2 minutes. And then after about 2 to 5 minutes, especially 20 minutes, your hands are numb and you can't really do anything, and you're like, ah. And it's a chore. And I totally understand if you hate sanding, that this is part of the reason why. Like, your hands are numb, you just feel terrible, and it's a terrible experience. And I know that a lot of people will push back when we talk about things like Festool, because they're like, oh, their Festool's so expensive. It is expensive, but there is a reason for it. There is a benefit to spending that money. And also, when you look at some of the pricing of Festool and you compare it to the better tools of any particular company, in some cases, it's not terribly dramatic as far as the difference in pricing. It is different, but it's not as dramatic as some people would have us believe. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So I have got some examples here. This is a 4-quarter walnut. Yeah, 4-quarter walnut, local walnut from my local sawyer. Andrew Easter is my local sawyer, and he's just up the road, and he does beautiful work, and you know, mills his own lumber from trees on his property. So it's really a nice way to go, because now we're dealing with a lot of local trees indigenous to the area. I live in Maryland, so you know, it's all Maryland trees. A lot of oak, a lot of both red and white. There's a lot of walnut, poplar, of course. We've got sometimes sassafras. What else is there? There's a lot of maple. You know, so a lot of these local woods, and you know, we're not getting. You know, he's not going to have things like sapelli or maybe like bubinga or other things. Those imported woods that are truly exotic. It's really about local woods, and that's kind of what I enjoy using. And that's what we have here. I've got 2 samples of finished walnut, and you can see it's got a really nice sheen on it, because we're taking it really, really high. Like, we're going to a very, very high grit with this. You know, we're taking, this is actually taken all the way to 800. And I'm going to show you tonight how we're doing this. You don't have to take it this far, and you know, when you're taking wood up to this level, you are burnishing the wood, meaning that you're kind of like almost heating it up and closing the pores and smoothing the fibers over. So the range of finishes that will work on, you know, 400 grit and up is a little more limited than if you're down in 120 grit to 240 grit. So those are going to be some things to consider. And depending on the finish that you're using, the manufacturer will also specify the best grit for you to finish in to get the best results, right? So, and it's going to be different for everyone. Like, if I'm using Sutherland Wells polymerized tongue oil with the botanicals, you know, they're talking 300, no, they're talking 240 grit, 220, 240, right on there. If you're talking Rubio Monocoat, it's 120, and some of the other ones are 150, 180, you know, somewhere right around there. There's going to be some range, but when you go past this, it's going to be a little bit more limited. And what I mean by that is that if you're using things like Osmo Poly-X, or if you're using polyurethane or Rubio, these are all finishes that need to adhere to the fibers of the wood, of the piece, right? So they need to adhere to it, and so they need some level of roughness for it to hold on to it, right? It's basically holding on to the wood to coat it because it's a surface coating, right? Now, when we're talking other finishes like the oils are more penetrating. So the oils aren't trying to hang on to the surface of the wood, they're getting inside the wood. And even though this wood is really nicely polished and burnished, it is not, it's not preventing that from happening. This particular one has the Teddy's polymerized tongue oil paste from Southern Wells on it. Both of these pieces have. These were actually sequential pieces of walnut that I was doing a video on about finishing, or actually about sanding. It's going to be a longer video, very similar to what we're going to be talking about today, but it's going to be a lot more in depth and really showing the difference in times between the two. Today we're just going to use one example. But that being said, my favorite sander to make sanding more enjoyable is this one. This is the Festool Rotex RO150. It's a 150 millimeter or 6-inch sander, and I think it's the best sander out there. Like, if I first got to use this about a year ago, my friend Matt had bought one of these, and I used it on a couple projects, because he lent it to me, and he, crazy man, he's lending it to me. He's like, yeah, man, you need to use it. Go right ahead. So I used it for a couple projects here at the workshop, and I was so blown away by just the power and the. I just think it's like an awesome sander. I can't speak well enough about it. And then finally, after a while, he was like, hey man, can I get my sander back? I was like, yeah, of course. So I gave it back to him. And this is almost like November now, November, close to Christmas time, because he was like, yeah, I'd like to do a project here, and then no problem, get it back to him. And at that moment in time, like this sander today, if you were to buy this today, it's $750, 740 something like that, right? $740, but it's expensive, and even back then I think it was just under 700. So it's expensive. It's an expensive grinder, and I was like, at the time I was really strapped. I didn't have that. I didn't have $700 to spend. We're almost at Christmas time. I'm like, I gotta buy gifts. I can't be doing that. So I ended up looking online, because there's another grinder. There's another sander that I had heard about that people were talking about. And I was like, and everyone's like, it's so close to the Rotex, and it's way cheaper. And I was like, oh, let me go. And I found one used on Marketplace, and I ordered it. Oh, and it's like, but it was up in Connecticut. Somehow I found it in Connecticut. And this is the thing, things come at just the right time when you need it. And I called up my cousin who lives up there, because I was like, hey man, are you coming back for Christmas? He's like, yeah, can you, if I make this deal, can you go pick it up for me? And it turns out from where he lives in Connecticut, it was like an hour and a half, and I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. But I was so desperate to get it. And this is the Bosch GET756N. And this is also 150 millimeter or 6-inch sander. And as you can see, it's very, very similar looking to the Rotex. These are both what they call gear-driven sanders. And the gear-driven meaning that these are dual mode sanders, right? That's what they call it. So there is a setting where you have it in random orbit mode, so it will just spin like this. And then when you flick this switch here, it then will click and lock. And now it's what they call gear driven, so it's very, very aggressive. Now this particular sander, the RO150, has a 5 millimeter orbit, so the orbit circle is 5 millimeters wide. The Bosch is very similar in that it has also this random orbit mode, so it spins, and then you hit the turbo switch, and it locks, and then it goes to and does its thing. Now this one has a 4.5 millimeter orbit, so slightly smaller orbit, so maybe slightly less aggressive. And that's what I used for these. These two boards, I did one of each. This is, yeah, that's right, RO150 and the GET756N. These both sanders come in 5-inch or 125 millimeter versions, right? So there's a RO125, and then there's also the GET755N. They're a little bit cheaper. Now this particular one, if you bought this new today, it would be $350. So that's MSRP. I think that's MSRP. So it's half the price of the Rotex. And we're going to go through it, and you can decide for yourself what you think about the difference between the two. I mean, so I had this. I bought this used. I got it for $250, I think it was at the time. So a pretty nice, pretty good deal. It was very clean, very great shape. The guy who owned it had not really used it very much, and I was still interested in buying the RO150, right? So I've got this, and I still want to buy this. Right? And I'll be honest, the time that in the several months that I have been using this, the 4 months, the 3-4 months that I was using this, it was a great performer. I enjoyed using it very, very much. Okay, I'll give it away now. It's essentially the equivalent. To me, it was like the equivalent of the RO150. But I love the RO150, and I needed to have one. So I found one in the marketplace that was a little bit. The guy who I bought it from was a woodworker, cabinet maker, and he used it a lot. So it was. This one came fairly well worked, but still in good shape, and I got that for a good deal, like $350, I think it was for this. But he also gave me like a ton of sandpaper abrasive, just tons, and like boxes and boxes. And I was like, what am I gonna? I don't know if I'll ever be able to go through all of this abrasive. So that's part of the reason why I have such a range of abrasives today, that up to, I think I even got up to 2,000 grit granat, and it's very kind of crazy, but. We're going to go through this, and we're not going to use this today because this one is kind of like the one that everybody wants to beat. It's kind of the proven performer, so we're not going to use this. We are going to use this one to do the work. And one of the things that I saw about the Rotex that really blew me away was that, if you listen to a lot of people, they talk about, these are beasts, these will hog out all this sand, and it's true. You can get these to hog out quite a lot of material off of your workpiece, and we're going to show that. We're going to show that tonight. But these are capable of doing fine finish sanding as well. And the first, because you think, at some point I got to switch back into random orbit mode. No, tonight we're not going to switch into random orbit mode. It's going to be gear driven all the way. These two boards were created by these two sanders completely in gear driven mode. There was a guy, I don't know if he still works for them, but there was a guy by the name of Larry Smith who worked for Festool USA at least several years ago, and he has a video that's like 12, 13 years old now, and I watched it, and he showed kind of like how to do this, and I was like, what? You can do that? That's craziness. So I was really blown away, and I was like, I'm going to start doing that. So basically now for the most part, I'm using just the RO150, and I'm just going to town on all my work pieces, just doing all the sanding in gear driven mode, and it's really surprising. You're not getting, if you're doing the technique correctly, you're not getting swirl ups. And some of those techniques that you want to be careful with is you want to be able to hold it. But these are very, very squirrely grinders in their turbo or Rotex mode, and they're also a little bit off balance. Right, this is pretty huge for a sander, so you want to hold it here in the front, something like this, and you want to also support it in the back to keep it flat, because you want to keep the pad flat on the workpiece so that it's, so you're not getting like unevenness and gouging on it, right? So that's a really important thing, and that's true with the Bosch, right? The Bosch GET, you want to keep that here. Now they both have great dust extraction, that's removable. I can take this off, and I can take this dust extraction nozzle off, and part of the reason that you can do this is so that you want to do polishing with it, where you don't need vacuum. You can do that, and so, oops. But yes, so there's 350 and 740. Right now, though, on next week Thursday, on the September 18th, they're coming out with the Festool, the Rotex RO150 100th Anniversary Edition, which gives you a 12-pack of sandpaper and drops the price by $53. So it's like, oh, under $700 for the RO150. If you're in the market for RO150, that's going to be the one to buy, because it's at a discount over the normal price. If you're not necessarily in the market for 150 and you're trying to think, oh, which is better, I'll let you see exactly what's going to happen tonight. I think you'll be surprised. I think if budget is really a tighter thing, I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised with the results. Another thing about this is that, one of the things, why are you paying more for Festool? Festool costs a lot more. Part of that is going to be your warranty, right? That's one of the big things with Festool that I really like as a user. Bosch comes with a 1-year warranty, which is, I think, pretty good. But Festool comes with a 3-year warranty. Once you get the tool, after you buy the tool, it's good for 3 years, and the 3 years covers anything, right? Like there's a limited warranty on this one, and there's like, I don't, they say it's limited, but it seems that it's just pretty much, if you're using your tool in the first 3 years and you destroy it, they'll fix it, or they'll give you another one if it's really bad. And on top of that, like I say, you break this and you got to send it in. You got to send it in. You break this, you call them up, and they're like, okay, we're going to send you RO tag, or I think they'll even send you the packaging, and you just kind of, you wait, you get it, you put it in the box, and you send it off to them, and it comes back in 3 days. Or at least they try to do a turnaround in 3 days, because they know that people are using this in the field professionally, so they need to get it to be turned around very fast. So those are some of the things that, especially if you're working professionally and you're going to be using the tool a lot, that's something that might be heavier to consider for whether or not you go with one or the other. 3 years, 1 year, and then this is totally comprehensive. As you can see, I've got this workbench here, and when I drilled the holes for these are 20 millimeter holes through 1.5 inch thick double plywood, which is pretty tough on the tool. I was actually thinking when I started, I'll just use the DeWalt impact driver. Then I thought, I have a Festool CXS12, which is a 12-volt drill, and I was like, I'll just use that. And why? And I was like, but it may not be. And I was kind of, at one point I was thinking, maybe it might burn out. But I was like, wait a minute, I'll use that, because if I burn it out, I'll just send it in and they'll fix it. So I was like, okay, that's all right then. So it didn't burn out. The Festool drills, while they seem very benign, they're actually quite solid. All right, let's get into it now. We're gonna put this back over here. This is our GET75. Some things to know: there's the turbo switch is over here, and then you've got your power switch. This one has a handle already attached. On the R150, you can put the handle on. Then what else do we need to know here? We've got the dust port. There's also speed control. I just leave it up high for the most part, unless we're going to start doing some kind of polishing operation. Then we're going to need to change that and lower the speed. But it all works very simply. We've got our cable here. The one thing that, especially if you're in the Festool ecosystem, and you use other tools that are like this one with a cord, it's a little bit like irritating, because you're so used to the plug-it cable from Festool, where you just kind of use one cable and plug it into all the tools, and then you have your tool and it has no cables to it, so it's very, very clean to use, right? So I'm going to plug it into my CT mini extractor here. Now, if you don't have a dust extractor, and you're just using it for general shop use, or just using it to take dust off of your bandsaw or your trap saw or whatever, most any shop vac will do, as long as you can connect it. When it comes to doing sanding, you really want to have an extractor, whether it's Festool or whether it's Fine, or any of the ones out there. Even the one from Harbor Freight, the Hercules, will work, right? What you're looking for in the extractor, what the extractor is really important is that, like, this is the Festool CT MIDI, and it's got a remote control, but we've got so right now the extractor is set to full power, which, if you're not too familiar with sanding, you might think that, I want full power, full suction. I want full suction. You don't want full suction. What you want is low suction. You want to, and so in this case, we're going to turn it back on, and I'm going to lower the suction down to on this one, there's like, how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 LED indicators. I would usually choose between 1 and 2 on the indicator. Today, I'm going to set it to the 2 setting. And why is that? So, because you think that the suction is coming through the pad, right? It's coming through here and pulling through the pad, and it's going to suck. If the suction is hard, it's going to suck it down, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I need. I need power. I need to just kill it. But the problem with that is that because it's got so much suction, especially on the larger grits, it tends to gouge the wood with swirl marks. And a lot of these swirl marks, especially as you're working up the grits, they'll remain, but you won't see them until you actually put the finish, and then you actually get the light on. You're like, oh man, and you got to go back and redo it. It's really a difficult situation. But the reason we want to use low suction is because the way these pads are designed, they just want to pull the air through it, and by pulling the air through it, they're getting the dust, and the dust is not being stuck here between the workpiece and the abrasive. It's coming through the holes and being sucked out and away, and it's actually kind of glides more. It's a lot easier to move the sander around, and you don't have to hold on to it as tight typically. These gear-driven sanders are just kind of like, can be squirrely. So a lot of times you do have to hold on to them, but it is you'll notice the difference when you change the setting, and that's why it's important to use an extractor. Mom, good morning. Or good evening. So used to saying good morning to you, but they're so much easier to use once you have it gliding, that it really makes a big difference. This is part of the reason why I'm so enthusiastic about sanding overall. So for this, we're just going to take the Festool hose, which nicely, Bosch is good. They have it so it fits here snugly, and that's pretty much it. So we'll turn on. You can just turn on the switch, and it just turns on. Now, before we begin, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is you should be using some kind of PPE, like if a mask would be good to prevent you from sucking in all of any kind of dust that gets out into the open. I also will use things like this. I kind of got it here just out of shot camera range. I've got this filter set up. I'm really concerned nowadays, now that I'm older, about dust and health. So this is a 20-inch fan that I've set up that has a couple of different 4-inch and inch filters on them, and I keep them really close to the workpiece to pull as much of any kind of air and dust through the filters and to try to catch them before they go anywhere else. Then beyond that, above everything flying here, I put this other MERV 15 filter system with another 20-inch fan that's meant to do the whole shop, and that's usually on all the time. None of these are on tonight because I'm trying to keep it as quiet as possible so that you can hear what I have to say and, that kind of thing. And yeah, but normally those are going to be running, and you want to wear PPE so that, you can, it's important to try to keep yourself as healthy as possible. Now, to show you the workpiece we're going to be using, I've got another piece of this board that I'll show you. This is actually the actual rough cut timber that I've been cutting it all from. So as you can see here, we've got fairly rough sawn walnut. You can see the roughness here, the saw marks, and it's actually a little bit bowed, right? It's a little bit bowed. Now we could sand it. You could sand it till it's all flat and not bowed, but we're not going to do that. That would just be crazy. That's why we have jointers and planers to do those kind of things. But we're just gonna take this rough surface, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna smoothen it out. We're gonna show you why these gear-driven sanders are truly kind of awesome. And yeah, that's kind of the whole deal here. Let me get to. I'm gonna change our camera setup here, so that you can see this all better. That does not change, okay. I can't reach that right here. I'm going to take it off of the tripod that I have over to get a wider angle, but I want you guys to get a good view of the actual workpiece. I think that's going to be I really find this to be the most interesting part of the sanding process. We're going to put this right about there so you can see it really well. I think that's going to be the best way to go. And we're going to clamp this down. Let me just make some room here. this little, you know, these are what they're just like mats so that they don't move from this. These you can. This one I got at Home Goods. Whoops. These I got at Home Goods, but you can get them anywhere. Harbor Freight has them for very, very reasonably priced. And then we're going to clamp this piece down using the MFT, the clamping elements from Festool. Okay, now we've got this down. We're going to start by sanding through this rough sawn. You can see how rough sawn it is, right? Like, look at that. Plug you there. But you can see it's very rough sawn, like rough. You can see some of all the saw marks. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the grits. We're going to start off very coarse. We're going to use, and today we're going to use a variety of grit papers. We're going to start, oh, this is good. We're starting off here. This is 60 grit Festool Granat, which is their normal one. So we're going to use a variety of different abrasives today because, you know, I think it's just kind of nice to show you that. Actually, we could start, oh, let's start here. We're going to start here first with Rubin paper from Festool also. This is Festool Rubin 2, and it is a 40 grit. So we're going to really get down and get dirty with this. Now, when it comes to Festool has updated their papers to what they call Jetstream 2, and this is a hole pattern that is designed to not just give good float and good suction, but, you know, just good to keep everything clean. And the thing about that is that these are more proprietary to Festool, and so you don't really have those same hole patterns on the Bosch. So the Bosch has a different hole pattern, and that's actually going to play a role in the way that, in how this works. Now, you can see that I'm lining up the bigger holes here on the perimeter, but the ones in the center don't necessarily match. It's not critical because that's really where you're taking a lot of it, and a lot of it's about floating into and pulling it out, something like that. And so this is super coarse. This is 40 grit. So we're going to start there, and what we're doing is we're just going to go over it. Probably, you know, this way first, and then up and down, and then one more pass, and that should knock down a lot of this roughness. But let's get to it, and you see, when you're starting your sanding, in this case, you probably need to support a little bit with you want to support the back here. As you can see, I'm holding it. I like to hold it up here. You can hold it here. I just feel like I have better control by holding it here on the head of either of these two grinders, but I always hold it here in the back. And we always want to start with the pad on the workpiece. So what we do is we want to start with the pad on the workpiece, move it around, do your thing, and don't go too fast. Just go a little bit slow, right? But they say 1 second per inch is a good rate of speed. And then when you're finished with the passes, then before you turn it off, don't turn it off on the piece. You want to come off the piece and turn it off, right? So that's what we're going to do. So, all right, let's give it a try. All right, now you can see, wow, most of those really, really rough sawn parts are gone. Let's have a look here with a little bit of a light to give us, this is what we would consider a raking light. Oops. And this allows you to, I don't know if the detail's coming up, but now that I threw the raking light across here, I can see all of the scratches. There's a lot of scratches going on here. Now, right here is still some saw mark, right? And it's still this whole line So this part here is just a little bit lower, and you know, I would like to get even scratches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and we're going to concentrate a little, go back and forth a little bit, and then concentrate here a little bit just to get these rough sawn marks out. All right, let's do one more time. Stay with the 40. Maybe start a little bit lower. Right, that looks like we got it. Yeah, well, most of it. There's a little bit. You can see just a hint of it here, but now we are seeing even scratches. But they're fairly bigger scratches, but these because this is 40 grit. But now it's relatively even. Now, one thing we want to do is we want to make sure we brush off the surface to get off any extra dust, as well as, more importantly, as you're using the abrasives, sometimes the abrasive pieces will break off and then leave it behind. You don't want to leave that behind as you move up to the next grit level, because let's say if we move to 80 from 40, but couple pieces of the 40 are still lying on the piece, and you put the pad down, now even though we're swirling it and getting the 80 cut onto this, it's also got those couple pieces of 40 and it's now digging into it and gouging the piece. So that's something to consider about this. All right, now let's go change our grits. We went from 40, so this is Rubin 2 by Festool. Let's go we'll go up to 80 and see how that works. This time we're going to jump to, well, we've got a couple of different things. There's what's called Mirka Abranet. This is also an 80, and this is another company that makes sanders and they make abrasives. One of the most popular abrasives today, though, amongst a lot of the woodworkers, is what's called Cubitron Extract from 3M. This is their Cubitron 2 extract, and the extract means that these are mesh papers, just like this one. These are what's called mesh papers, and this is the Festool Granat mesh, and you can kind of see how they all have this mesh kind of thing to them. The mesh is really nice because you don't have to worry about lining up the holes like with these. You just slap it down and you're good to go. And especially with the Cubitron extract, it has really great cutting power and lasting power. Like these last a long time. These all last a good amount of time. But there's a guy, Jonathan Katz-Moses, out of Santa Barbara, California, who has a channel called Jonathan Katz-Moses. And he did a test maybe a year or two ago where he took a lot of these papers and ran scientific tests on how much the material these would remove, and he came out with the Cubitron 2 as being the one that was above all others. And so if you're looking for, these are definitely not cheap. None of these are cheap as far as papers go. If you're, like if you're used to buying Diablo or Gator at the big box stores, these are going to be per piece more expensive. However, per gram of material removed, these are actually cheaper because you don't have to change them as often, and they work a lot more efficiently and a lot better. So that's something to consider if you're thinking about buying papers. We're going to give the Cubitron extract a try. Now, one thing about these mesh abrasives that you want to keep in mind when you're using your sander is that these generate heat in a way that's different than regular abrasive papers. And I think it's probably because it's a mesh. It transfers the heat more. And so as you can see on here, there's actually a little pad on top of the regular sanding pad, right? You can see that here. This is what we call an interface pad or intermediate pad under Bosch's brand. And it's called interface pad with Festool. But if you're going to use mesh abrasives, you want to buy this, because there's usually 2 in a pack for like, I don't know, $16, so $8 a piece. Now in the Festool land, I actually have to replace this pad very soon, because this one is already like, this pad here is wearing out. And you can see that this is the interface pad for it. But this pad from Festool is $67. So, you know, I'm not too happy to pay $67 for a pad. The ones from Bosch, I think, are a lot less. Maybe you can get them on Amazon for like $30, so not terrible. But, you know, instead of having to have a $30 expense with your Bosch or $70 expense with your Rotex, you buy these for like 16 bucks for two, and this is what wears out before the main pad. So these are easier to change and cheaper to keep. So remember that if you're using mesh abrasives. I had to learn that the hard way. Last summer I was working with one of Matt's other 6-inch sanders, and suddenly it stopped working, and I was like, or suddenly it stopped. Suddenly I would turn the sander on and the paper would fly off. And I was like, what's going on here? And you know, back then the pads were $55, and I was like, oh man, $55. All right, let's wipe this off, and we're going to continue on. All right, this is 80 grit. We went 40, now 80. Okay, so as you can see on here, there's a little bit of dust, right? You can see that right here. There's a little bit of dust left over. And yeah, and you know, that's a little bit surprising. Well, it's not surprising, but it's a little bit unusual, right? So if I do this, I can feel, oh, it's a lot better. Definitely a lot smoother. Although right down here, obviously I did not get this correctly because it's still got the 40 scratches. Let's go back and finish that off. Now you can notice again, there's still some dustiness on here, and why is that? This is really fine dust that's left over from the sander, and that part of that reason is because of the way this whole pattern of holes is working, and sometimes it leaves a little bit extra. Plus, also the Cubitron is cutting at a very efficient rate, so that's all part of it. All right, so there we go, 80 grit. Now you can see if you look closely, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but if you end up looking, let's go a little bit closer with this. If you end up getting closer with it, you can see there's still little scratches in it. And there's always going to be some kind of scratches. It's always just about using progressively finer grits to get more, to make the scratches smaller and more even, right? So that's pretty much where we're going. Now we're going to move up to 120 grit, and this time we're going to go to Festool's Granatnet 120. We're going to try that and see how that works. So let's put that on here. The nice thing about these net abrasives, they last pretty long time, right? Sometimes they get a little bit abraded on the ends, just depending on like if you don't put it on like evenly. That's the one thing with the net, since you don't have holes to line it up, sometimes you don't line it up correctly. All right, that's going to be good. We don't need to look at the edges. Now, 120, let's go to it. All right, that's 120. you know, we're getting nicer, you know, smoother surfaces. Now it's really smooth. The scratches are very, very small. Like you really have to look for it now. And this is where we start to get to the point where people will start to put finishes and companies will start to tell you this is enough. You don't need to go any further. One of those is this company called Rubio Monocoat. This is their product. They do a two-part coating. This is my first time getting the Rubio. I've never had Rubio before. I've never tried it before. My local Woodcraft in Timonium, Maryland just started carrying this, and they had a 15% off sale of products over the weekend, and I was like, well, let me buy at least buy this. But it's one thing about Rubio Monocoat, everybody loves it. Like I know a couple guys that love to use it, and then if you watch YouTube woodworking, you're going to find that most YouTube woodworkers tend to love this. This and Total Boat are like what, I don't know if they really like it or if they're just being sponsored or whatever, but you notice it's Rubio Monocoat, so just one coat they say should do it. But if you watch these YouTubers, they're always putting like 2 coats, and I was like, why? The way this works is that it grabs onto the fibers and creates a hard barrier, right? So you only need 1 coat, and if you try to put more coats, it just kind of like sits there and doesn't do anything. So when you're actually wiping it off, you're actually wiping it off. You're not just like wiping excess, you're wiping the entire second coat off because it has nowhere to go. So why people do that, I don't know. You hear these YouTubers and they're like, oh, it looks better. Does it? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, who am I to say? Because I've never used this. This will be my first time using it, but it's expensive, right? $12.99 for the activator, and this is like what? This is maybe 30 milliliters, so 1 ounce, and then we've got $20 for 3 ounce, 100 milliliters for the main oil component. So you use the oil and you mix these two together, and it creates a hardening effect for that cures on your wood. And so that's Rubio Monocoat, and you would stop, if we were using that, we would stop right now at 120, but we're not using that. We're going to continue on and move into the higher grits. Now, we've been going from 40 to 80 to 120, so we've been jumping 40 grits each one. And so at 180, we're going to go now from 120, and now we're going to jump to 180 grit. Here we are. And we're just going to stay with the Festool Granat Net. I have a lot of Granat Net. I like the Granat Net. I think it's a really nice quality abrasive. You know, perhaps not works as efficiently as the Cubitron 2 extract, but you know, I don't have to buy. I would have to go and buy Cubitron 2 here. I've already got a whole selection of Festool papers that I don't have to buy. So, or I don't have to buy more. So that's why. So let's get to it. Okay, 180 grit. You can see I can still see some of the swirling. A lot of times with some of these swirlings, especially with like more of the heavier coatings, like even the Rubio Monocoat, it will fill in those little swirl marks. But here we are. That's getting much smoother, getting a little bit more of a glossiness to it. But I can still see in the light, I can still see some of the scratches going on. That's what we're going to continue on. Now, again, at 180, you could stop here for, what is there's a finish that I think Tried and True says 180 is good. There's another finish I was using recently that also says the 180 is the way to go. I can't remember what that is anymore, but at least offhand. But there'll be a place to start. What? Hang on, I should go look this up and see. I should know this since we're on Shop Talk, Woodshop Live. Oh, it's if I'm using tung oil, like regular tung oil, like this stuff here. If I'm using tung oil, then that would be 180 would be fine. 180 would be fine. So 180 is now. We're at 180 now. So that would be a great place to stop if we wanted to. But we're going to continue on, and we're going to go up next to 240. So here's going out at 240. Put that on. Now 180, like I said, the tongue oil, a lot of tried and true is good for that. Who else we have? Osmo Poly X can stop there. Most finishes you can stop here. If you're going to use linseed oil or mineral oil, you can stop there as well, and you don't have to go any further. And it'll be beautiful. It'll be lovely, lovely finish. But let's go up to 240 and see how it looks. All right, 240. Oh yeah, now we're really starting to see it get a lot. Now to the touch, it's really, really getting smoother, and I can still see a little bit of scratches, but they're really getting small now. Now they're really getting small. Wow, that's starting to get a lot more buttery, silky kind of feel to it just by the hand. That's really nice. That's really nice. All right, so let's continue on. We're going to go from 240 now, and we're going to jump fairly high, I think. I don't think we have anything. We don't have any interim. Yeah, so we're going to now jump from 240 and go straight to 400. So this is where the paper abrasive, this is Festool Granat 400. And now it starts to get a little bit more, instead of being like paperback like these are more of like a paper fitting. Now we're getting more of the film feeling kind of thing. So this is 400. So very, very fine now. Very, very fine. So I'm going to put that on here and then continue on. Now, since we are back to Jetstream papers with the holes in it, we have to line up the holes. And then now let's continue on. All right, 400 grit. Wow, really, really getting smooth. And now that really helps. That a lot smoother. You can kind of see here these kind of like bumpy looking things. These are actual figuring in the wood. So now we're getting really into the burnishing stage where we're starting to burnish the wood, smoothing it out and it's definitely hotter than the other passes that we've done. So now we're starting to burnish the wood, smoothing out all of the fibers. And this is now we're getting into beyond the point where things like Osmo Poly or Rubio Monocoat or polyurethanes, we're past the point where they will adhere. Not that they're going to slick off, but they won't adhere very well at this grit and finer. But gosh, it just feels so nice. When you want to have something that's very tactile feeling, this is just gosh. Okay, we're going to do one more grit level. We're going to go a little bit more. We're going to finish at 800. And as you can see here, this looks like this paper, right? So if we look at this paper, on the back it says 400, but on the 800, this is actually the abrasive surface. the foam padding, the hook and loop, the Velcro side padding is on the back, and then the wording is on the front. So I thought that was kind of, now really, this is very much a film rather than a paper. So I'm gonna put that on here, line up the holes again. Now you might have noticed that this hole pattern has less holes than the other Festool Granat. They're both Jetstream papers, but this is the more modern version, Jetstream 2 versus Jetstream 1. Or maybe this is Jetstream 3, this is Jetstream 2, because I think Jetstream 1 only had just a ring around. I don't know. Anyway. But one of the nice things, as long as you haven't gotten them wet and they're not in a humid environment and starting to decay, abrasive papers pretty much last forever. Like there's, you know, like I said, a lot of these papers came with my Rotex 150 from that cabinet guy, and he had it for several years, and because these generations are several years old, so they do last. All right, here we go, 800. Ooh. Now we're talking. Now you can kind of see how it looks a little bit whiter here on the grain. And I think that's because, you know, now we're at such a fine grit level, the dust is kind of like filling in some of the pores that we're cutting through. But man, this is like super, super slick. Like that's just, gosh, this is beautiful. This is like, you can just rub it. You just want to rub it, and it's very, really, really nice that way. Okay, let me just get a little towel here. We want to wipe off any excess, just to clean off excess. So you can wipe it off, brush it off, blow it off. I don't like blowing stuff in the workshop because it just blows more dust around, and I don't like that. What we're going to do is we're going to turn up our vac back to full power. And then vac up what we can. All right, now this is nice and clean. We're going to put a finish on it. We're just going to put a real simple finish. Nothing too crazy. I like this Teddy's. Teddy's is super easy to use. I really have come to like it. And plus also we're kind of limited as to what we can use because pretty much we have passed the grit possibilities for it. So this is Teddy's polymerized tung oil, and we could put tung oil, straight up oils on it if we wanted to, but this is a really nice product that I really like, and I've been using it quite a bit lately. I did, but you know what, here's the thing though, I'm thinking about it, and I did use Teddy's on both of these pieces, right? So we already have examples of the Teddy's. Maybe let's try something a little bit different. If we can go with anything else, then we could do mineral oils, or maybe we'll try Tried and True. Tried and True is another nice. This is a classic finish. A lot of people love Tried and True. One of the guys that I know, Paul, big Tried and True fan. And we're gonna, I don't remember exactly how this, it's been a while since I used it. Let's open up the can and, it's kind of gelatinized. I hope that's not a bad thing. All right, we're gonna take a blue shop towel, get down in there. Oh, it is kind of like, oh yeah, there we go. It just kind of got a little bit of a skin on it. But I've got a lot of it here, so I'm just gonna rub it on. Now, the Tried and True has some beeswax, I think, so it's got a little bit of, this is way too much. And so it does give a little bit of yellowing. I'm not sure exactly what's in there, but it is a pretty natural finish. But yeah, look at that. That is, oh yeah, baby, look at that. Tried and true. Gosh, I haven't used this in a while. I'm glad we did. Glad we did. I guess I do like this finish. All right, that's good. So as you can see with the oil finishes, they're relatively easy to apply. Like you'll have all these people tell you you'll have different people tell you different ways of doing it, and none of them are wrong. None of them are wrong. Just different ways of doing it. I mean, I've found that with like tongue oils, you just kind of like put it on as much as you want, and then you just kind of wipe it off after a while. And usually after about 10-15 minutes. I'm looking for my rag. All right, I got some rag here. Just a little bit of t-shirt cloth that you can pick up, you know, any t-shirt manufacturer, whatever. But you can wait 15 minutes, but we're just going to go to it now, and we'll just kind of wipe off any excess that's on here. Otherwise, it gets tacky. I mean, the texture is tacky. Oh yeah, baby, look at that. Lovely, lovely. Now let's get that out of the clamps now. Okay, there it is. This is our walnut using the Bosch GET 75, and then now we've taken it from 40 to 80 to 120 to 180, 240, 400, and then 800 grit paper. And then we coated it with some tried and true original. And just look at it, it's gorgeous. Like as you can see, we did not change our setting from the turbo mode, right? And it is really, really amazing how these gear-driven sanders will do this. Well, they're both, and Festool Rotex is really where I started, and it's just as good. Maybe the finish is a little bit better in the fact that, actually, let me change the camera angle again. It might, in some ways, I think the Festool Rotex is a little bit better, mainly because, like, on other tests that I've done like this, when I did the other two boards, I found that comparatively at each stage, the Rotex did not have as many swirls in the finish. At the end of the day, they're both pretty much the same, right? This is the Bosch, this is the Festool. There's a lot of shadow from the same. Let me get this out of the way. Yeah, so this is the Bosch, and this is the Festool. I mean, they're the same. They're the same boards, right? They're all adjoining boards. So same wood, same grain, same everything. But I can't say there's one necessarily totally superior than the other. And then we're going to look here. This is the Teddy's. And then this is tried and true. You can see with the difference between the two. There's the tried and true that we just did today is a little bit. It has a little bit more golden. It's a little bit deeper, right? The Teddy's is a little bit lighter in that respect. Now the figuring is a little bit different here, a little bit tighter, a little bit wider here. This is a little bit further down the board. I don't know if you can see that, but I think And so I think it looks great. I think it turned out well. And this is why I'm saying that I think that this is a great way to do sanding. I think it's why it makes it easy and it makes it enjoyable. Like this, you know, how long would you, if you had your regular, you know, 2 mm stroke, 5-inch random overhead sander, how long would it take you to do this? To go through this, to go from rough sawn all the way through the grids, it would take a lot longer and it would be a lot less enjoyable. This is pretty fast and, you know, very enjoyable to do, and you know, you can do it quite quickly. So, and the nice thing about using a 6-inch pad is that it's 40% greater surface area than a 5-inch. So everything is a little bit faster, right? You don't have to spend as much time doing the sanding, which always makes it more enjoyable, right? Especially if you're not enjoying sanding, you hate sanding like most woodworkers, this is a way that I think you can use to actually make it enjoyable, to actually make it fun and quick to get good results. And you don't have to even switch out of the Rotex or turbo mode. All right, I think if you have any questions, let me know. That's pretty much all I have for you today. So thanks very much for hanging out with me here in the garage, in the woodshop for Woodshop Live. And we're back again next week with a little more Woodshop Live and some other stuff to talk about here in the garage. So hope you have a wonderful one. And yeah, see you next time.